Welcome. My name is Douglas Getz, and you've found your way to the Diving and Thriving podcast. Here, we have enlightening conversations about how we can better navigate this sometimes crazy world we live in. From refreshing spiritual perspectives to tips about personal growth, the focus here is about how we can become better human beings. So I'd like to thank you for being here today, and I hope you enjoy this episode. But yeah, I'm happy to finally get you on the podcast.
I know.
Yeah, no, this is good. I wanted to, I see you post really awesome things on Instagram. Mm-hmm. I really like the views that you put out. And, it's always valuable to see issues in a different light. Or, with a different lens. And I see you put that out. And it's really refreshing. Especially related to diet, to exercise, not being too hard on ourselves. That stuff's valuable.
Totally. Yeah. That's really what was so helpful for me, because honestly, exercise and finding nutrition that actually made me feel really good was so pivotal in my transformation story. And I realized that so much of the culture around exercise and dieting was really about being so hard on ourselves and how I had already been putting so much pressure on myself. And I was I actually love these things, and nutrition in and of itself has saved me in many ways, mentally and physically. And then exercise too, it felt really liberating. But when I began to look at it through the lens of liberation, instead of really trying to change my body, that was when I really stepped into, these are really, really powerful tools, and I don't think the media really completely represents it for what it is.
Yeah.
And what it really does. They're really trying to sell us on our pain points.
Yeah, they're always trying to sell us on those kind of things because they make money from it, clearly.
Yeah. And I really believe that, I don't get why the pain points are the way to sell. It's empowerment is really what it does. And that is more, that for me feels like a greater thing to bring into our life. So the fact that the media does that, I feel like it has some catching up to do.
Yeah, but even then, empowerment is a pain point too for people who lack the confidence.
True.
Go to the gym, look good, you'll get that confidence. Want to know how to look good? Take this pill.
So true. It's always that's such a good point, because it's always we're not there yet. And these are what we have to do in order to get there. And, I really have found in myself that acceptance, radically accepting myself, pretty much no matter where I am on my path, has been a great antidote to always wanting more, always trying to feed into I want to do this, or I want to change this about me, because us as humans, we always have that wanting to fix mentality. So really just coming into some acceptance, some radical acceptance of who I am in this moment, bring a lot more peace in, and it calmed the storm a bit.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So how did you get into it? What made you start down the body liberation and the diet and the new way of viewing that?
It started when I was a teenager, and I was really struggling mentally and physically, and really manipulating my eating at the time, and was using eating too much or eating too little as a way to handle my stress. Mm-hmm. And I began to get treatment for those things, and maybe at around 15 years old, 14, 15. And then I started to realize at some point that I could gain I'm going to go back to the lens that I had when I was then, but this is not how necessarily I view it today.
Yeah.
But back then it was like I can gain the control that I didn't have going on of the stress by, instead of going down the maladaptive road of coping skills, so like coping skills that are really harmful, I'm going to choose coping skills that are really helpful.
Yeah.
So it was like kind of pointing my lens and my arrow in a different direction in order to combat stress and combat anxiety and depression that I had that had really taken a toll on me at a young age. And I decided I started working out and working out and building muscle, and really that I felt like stronger.
Yeah.
And I felt like I felt a deeper sense of connection to myself. So then I wanted to study exercise physiology and health science and health, everything about how to really become well and empowered. And that's like when it kind of began to head down that path was like, I should study this because this has been so life-changing.
Yeah.
I didn't know where it would go, but that was how it kind of started.
Yeah. So what was your like relationship with food back then? Like, how was it? Like, I mean, because I think everybody kind of has an interesting dynamic with food, just like money, just like other stuff. I mean, romantic relationships is another prime aspect that all of us have, how we interact with a partner.
Yeah.
And what kind of things we've taken in from our parents and how it shows itself regularly, constantly. How often do we eat a day? How often do we get stressed, and what are our coping mechanisms? I mean, yeah, especially if you come at it from a teenager's point of view, or like you're definitely, you don't have too much to go off of, like.
Exactly.
So yeah,
back then it was, I really began to struggle with eating symptoms back when I was 14 years old of restrictive eating and even other symptoms around eating disordered behavior. And that like I believe and still very much believe that treatment like either any type of psychological treatment is very important when you're at certain stages within an eating disorder at all. So I had to get treatment. So I did that around 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
And that was crucial for my survival. That was really, really important for me to seek treatment and to not be scared. I mean, yeah, it was scary to get treatment because this had been my way that I was coping with the world at that point.
Was not eating enough, or
generally not eating enough, but my symptoms had switched. So they just kind of depend on the time that I was experiencing, that bout of behaviors. But and generally, yeah, that was what it was back then, and it transitioned out into getting treatment, and then I was good for 13 years. I was good. I had worked with for the most part, I had really established a pretty decent relationship with food and exercise, and I had done that mostly on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You said you got treatment at that time.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the takeaways from that treatment that helped you? And you said you also did it on your own too. So what were the kind of little pieces that aided you? to that new way of viewing things. Like,
yeah, I got treatment at a facility, like a eating disorder treatment facility, inpatient. I think I was there for like 26 days or something. And that was so critical at that point for me, because I really needed a safe place to focus just on my treatment and me, and I and then, getting out of that, they put you into like intensive outpatient, so you kind of have these step downs into where you're eventually on your own and doing the things. And I did continue in therapy for maybe a year or two after an inpatient stay at 14, 15. But and I would say my biggest takeaway from that treatment was learning to advocate for myself. Because that was something that I really began to make myself super small, not only like in the way I looked, but the way I treated myself. And through treatment, that is just something that I've learned is advocating for myself and what I need, because that is just so important in general, and also especially with someone struggling with the eating disorder, learning how to be like, I need help. I really need to tell someone about what's going on, because it can be like really dark and lonely within that time period. And so I began to learn how to speak up for what I needed.
That's big. Yeah, a lot of people have trouble with that. Like, I've found I've had trouble with that too. Like, certain things are going on. I've noticed if I ever get to a point where I say to myself, I should be able to handle this myself. Like, I'm 26, I'm this age at this time. I should be able to handle this myself. Because I figured this out. If I say that to myself, that's usually the point when I need to talk to somebody else about this, whether it's my dad or a friend, or like spread some of this pressure that I'm feeling out among my support group, get some feedback. Like, one of the beautiful things about like being able to share things with my dad is that he would make jokes about stuff. And I would be really under intense pressure, or if I was going through like a relationship issue or having trouble deciding something, I'd talk with him, and within like 2-3 minutes he'd be making jokes. And we were always the relationship where it was never like, you can't joke about stuff. We could joke about anything, and it would lighten the mood. And it was so beneficial, because it was like, oh my gosh, I was just stressing about this for the past week, and now I'm laughing about it. So something like that was just so valuable and important, because, God, that just took all the pressure off my shoulder. At least I can laugh about this now. We don't have to resolve it in this moment, but at least we can laugh at it.
Totally. And I really think that's wonderful to find, or to find someone who can do that for you, or just being able to even just speak it out loud, because sometimes the things that we don't say sometimes persist, and sometimes speaking them out loud and to someone, it can either, in your case, lighten the mood and make things be like, wow, I'm making life really challenging, and I feel a lot of pressure, and that really happens to so many of us. But sometimes hearing it or saying it out loud really can just be the pressure release that we might be just like holding on to for so long.
And it's valuable. And even like I've found, like, sometimes, because I'm not too big on social media, sometimes I'll post something on social media if I'm going through a difficult time. Like, that's few and far between. But whatever we can do really to release that pressure is so valuable. And that's like a great starting point, whether it's talking to somebody or whatnot. It's like I said, if I ever have that thought of, I should be able to handle this on my own, that's like an indicator I should share this with somebody.
Right.
I should bounce this off with somebody else and see what they think.
Yeah.
It could be something small as just scheduling how my spring is going to be set up. It could be something like that.
Yeah.
But still, hugely valuable.
Totally.
So yeah.
And sometimes like allowing ourselves to be supported when we really feel like we really should be strong, we should be able to handle this. And it's like allowing support like is challenging first step, but beginning and just learning to like advocate for what you need is a tremendous skill.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hugely valuable. Like a lot of people think it's all on them. I've gotten to that point too. It's all on me.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, it's extremely valuable to be able to ask for help.
Totally.
But for sure.
Yeah.
But no, it's super cool that you've gotten, like, that you've dove into the diet culture so much because, like, I've had my own issues in relation to food. I know other people that have it, like, much worse or different problems and varying levels of severity and whatnot. And I haven't dived into it too much, so I'm kind of, like, on the outskirts of it.
Yeah.
My kind of view on food, it was always an interesting one, is that, like, I've always had the issue of not thinking I weighed enough or wanting to weigh more. That was, like, kind of where I was at, always wanting to eat more food, but then not really having the diet to produce that. Like, I'd eat, like, a good amount of food in the beginning, and then I'd be full, and then maybe 30, 45 minutes could go by, and then I'd be like, oh, I could have eaten some more, or whatnot.
Yeah.
But then I would, like, kind of stay at a state of, like, kind of constantly, like, a little bit hungry. And people would look at me and be like, Doug, you eat so much food.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, but I'm not, like, where I want to be. Or I'm not, like, gaining the weight I want to gain. And so that was, like, my kind of, like, relationship with food. And it comes down from our parents. Like, a lot of the issues that we have, whether it's trauma or different things, get passed down in some respect or another. And my mom was always the one that would say, like, why am I the only one that can gain weight in this family? From, like, little ages. And, like, oh, then, like, we might not eat too much at dinner. And she's like, what, are you guys going on a diet? Like, why am I the only one that gains weight? And just, like, little comments like that kind of exacerbate it. Right. And so, yeah, I'm starting to, one of the recent things that I've done is start to make it an effort to eat double portions. And whatnot, just whatever I think is like one portion, double it.
Yeah. And
then just take your time in eating it, because I'll eat a good amount at the beginning and then it'll be full, and then 15 minutes will pass and I'll be like, oh yeah, now I can eat some more. So it's like, oh, and then this gets me slowly more to where I want to be, like in relation to where I want my body weight to be, pretty much.
Yeah.
Because I've never had an issue with going to the gym. That's been like a pretty consistent thing. It's always been a relief too. Relief.
That's great.
Yeah. The other aspect, because I've never been a big fan of going on runs. Like I've always just
Me neither.
Yeah, right. It's something to get into. Yeah. Like I was kicked off my track team in 8th grade because I didn't want to run the 800. I refused it, so I got kicked off.
Complete refusal.
But I use runs nowadays as a way to clear my mind if something's going on. Like if I'm ruminating about something and just going over and over in my head, something stupid or something big, whatever it is, and I just need a break, I'm like, all right, let me go on a run.
Yeah.
Because when I'm on a run, my mind's, I don't have really the amount of like mental like capability to think about it the way I want to. You're running. You're breathing. You're focused on putting one step in front of the other and trying to keep your lungs full.
It's so true. I think that it's a great point about our goals, what they might be, and how we can use nutrition to reach them. And I have to say, for me and my experience, something that has been so incredibly powerful is this, something that you're already doing, and you're also finding out how to best meet your goals while doing this. And this is through intuitive eating. And this is something that I have found to be so beneficial for me. Like, I mean, I have a general sense in terms of when it comes to what I need to eat. So in terms of like, okay, I I need protein and I need carbohydrates and I need fats and those things. Like I get that, but I do not overthink it too much. What I do is, for me, I have a portioning for me is very simple. I have like a strategy that I use with clients for portioning, and it's very simple and easy to do. And I'm and it's only if it feels good for them and they want to learn this. I always I make sure that it's something that they want to do and feel it would be applicable and helpful.
Yeah. What's your strategy?
I use the hand. I use the hand as a reference guide. So, so for instance, a serving of protein in general could be the size of your palm. Okay, and then for a carbohydrate, it could be your cupped hand. All right, and then for a fat, it would be the size of your thumb. It would be a serving, and this is just general, and it's not. But it's sometimes gets a little bit confusing. And for you, if you're trying to double your portions, that could be a way, as well that you could utilize if it would work for you. And also what I find to be really helpful, because that is portioning. That is not necessarily intuitive eating necessarily, but can be very helpful for some. And then when it comes to intuitive eating, once I make my plate or make my meal, then what the best foundation for me is mindfulness when it comes to eating. So, and that can be getting off my phone, getting away from technology, off my computer, and those two things can be really helpful in terms of checking in with my body. How is it going? How am I feeling? Am I feeling satisfied from this? And something that I believe in strongly is the satisfaction is noticing when that satisfaction starts to decline, and noticing I'm not feeling as satisfied from this. Okay, so maybe I'm approaching my fullness, but you can continue eating, and then noticing your what's called last bite threshold, asking yourself, I feel like I'm coming up on my last bite. I feel this fullness approaching. Asking your gut, is this my last bite? And listening for the answer, the yes or no answer. Yeah. And then, eating the last bite and totally enjoying it, putting your fork down, but knowing that you can come back to it, knowing that you can, if you wanted to, this is not a end all be all type of thing, but for your case, when you feel that desire or that, I want, or I'm feeling hungry again, whatever amount of time after, that could be a time when you begin to utilize some strategies in intuitive eating to really basically just gauge your hunger and your fullness levels. I saw it really apparent. Actually, the last gentleman I had on my podcast was a guy that I met at Firefly back in 2019. Stayed in good touch with him. He's a yoga teacher up near the Lansdale area in Bluebell and whatnot. And I saw him practice intuitive eating when I was with him at Firefly. And he'd be eating something and he would just go through it and he'd be he'd take his bite and he said, I'm good. And he would do that with alcohol and other things very intuitively, I'm good. Yes. And I was always raised to finish what's on your plate. Don't waste anything. Yeah. So to see him do that, I was wow, look at that. That's another way to go about things and being very in touch with your body and say, I'm good. Right there. I don't need any more. I'm content. Yeah. Right there. It's so whoa, powerful. How about that? Totally. So it was a different way of seeing food, of eating food, because it's really nice to go out into the world and see how other people do things, because it provides something that you can compare your ways to. Yeah. So how somebody else does it, you say, oh, that's interesting, and then you pick up certain things, you leave what doesn't apply, you pick up what could be valuable. Yeah. And so seeing that was a real different way of eating, relating to food. It's oh, that's really cool. So true. And it's something that you mentioned earlier with getting passed down to our parents, that clean the plate mentality. Yeah. That can be passed down even generations and generations and generations. And,
There's countless starving people in the
Exactly,
world.
yeah.
They would kill to have this.
Exactly.
You better finish your plate.
The narrative, it's strong, and I see this too, and I think that learning to, even if that is something that you value as one of your value systems, but maybe you want to learn intuitive eating, could be wrapping up food. Like, we're not wasting food. We're going to wrap it up, and like you're doing, like keep it for, maybe a couple hours later or the next meal or whenever you're feeling that urge to eat again.
Yeah.
And yeah, the clean the plate mentality is something that, it's actually easy to even fall into, not that it's necessarily, there's a right and wrong answer here, but especially when I'm utilizing technology, watching a movie while I'm eating or something, I realize, it's just, I just am using vision to gauge if I'm almost done. Instead of checking in with my body. Yeah. I always am about wrapping up food, and then if it feels good to eat it later, go ahead and enjoy it. But yeah, definitely mindfulness has been so crucial around eating and for me, and checking in about, okay, I want something. I just had something really sweet the other day, and I wanted to eat it because it looked so good and it sounded great, and I had a few bites of it, but I really checked in with my stomach, and I was like, ooh, this dairy, this thing is not really feeling that great. Yeah. And I basically formulating this relationship with myself, and I see it within clients, formulating the relationship with themselves when it comes to their wellness routine, their exercise, and I really believe in mindful exercise, like you mentioned. And to just be the life-changing. And it's so, just gaining this relationship with yourself, who you're with 24/7 for the rest of your life. It's just it's changed everything. Yeah. Yeah,
it's kind of wild that, because we really don't check in. I don't know what the percentage is, but I know I'm guilty of it, and not checking in with myself as much as I should. And the fact you can eat something that is not making you feel good, but you'll finish it. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, these first couple bites didn't feel too great. I'm going to keep eating. Mm-hmm. Or I'm just finish my plate, or whatever it is. And it's kind of wild that we do that, and then we feel bad after the fact, whether it's knowingly eating McDonald's or knowingly eating certain foods that we know don't make us feel good, and just choosing that regularly and whatnot. Fun, and it's also different cultures vary it. Sure. I remember I came across one thing online, because the finish your plate kind of mentality is a very American culture kind of deal. I remember coming across one thing that in Asian cultures, or certain Asian cultures, if you finish your plate, it means you're still hungry.
They'll keep feeding you.
Yeah, so they're like, oh my gosh, you're still hungry. Oh my gosh. And then they'll put more food on your plate. So to finish your eating, you had to leave some food on your plate so that they knew you were full. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting.
That almost makes sense in a way, just socially, a social cue.
Yeah, it's definitely a social cue.
Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, other cultures have different ways of looking at things. I know France, in certain European cultures, really take their time with food and meals and different things. Mm-hmm. And dinner could last 2-3 hours. Yeah. And really it's drawn out between the relationships with the people at the table, the wines paired with each course, and just taking your time with it. And I remember I had a professor who worked in France for a while, and they looked at Americans how long do you think it takes the average American to eat breakfast? So how long do you think?
Maybe to eat 10 minutes.
Yeah, they said 12 minutes.
Yeah.
For them, it's about a 45-minute ordeal to eat breakfast.
Wow.
It's oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Over there, they have required 45-minute lunch breaks.
That's beautiful.
Required.
I think
you can't go back to work before then. They stop you.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so true, Doug, and I think that we feel almost guilty, that notion that you mentioned, the guilt to take a half hour to 45-minute time for breakfast, or a full hour for lunch, And it is not a waste of time to sit down at a table and turn off your technology or put it on airplane mode or whatever you need to do to check out and check in with yourself and your gut and what you're wanting and how it's feeling in as you're eating it, and really to check in with your fullness. It's not a waste of time. It can be foundational in formulating this relationship with yourself, because I mean, honestly, asking someone to start a meditation routine because it's good for your wellness sounds great, but like that is not always realistic whatsoever, or the first stage at all. So it's like, but do we eat 3 times a day at least, most of us? Yes. Mm-hmm. So like finding that we can find this relationship, begin to cultivate within something we already do 3 times a day, can be like, oh wow, like I'm starting to something with myself, this relationship of care and listening, mm-hmm. and it can begin to seep into other areas of well-being.
Yeah, that intuitive checking in with ourselves is hugely valuable. Mm-hmm. And like food is definitely an area that we can use it in. Yeah. Like how foods make us feel. We can tell really quickly, oh, this is agreeing with me or this is not agreeing with me.
I agree with
that. Tell really quickly. I mean, it was really funny. One time, a while back, I stopped drinking regular milk. I drink almond milk now with my cereals and different things.
Okay.
And I remember exactly the day that I switched, because it was like around 7 p.m. I just got home from school. I should have made dinner. Didn't have the energy to it. Didn't feel like it. I was like, I'm going to have a bowl of cereal. I ate a bowl of cereal, pour regular whole milk in it, eat it. And then like 5-10 minutes later, it felt like my stomach was just it felt like I had an udder. It's an odd way, but it was like the perfect like way to equate it is like my stomach wasn't udder. It was like pushing out. It was all that dairy. And I was like, oh my God, I wish I had like little nipples on my stomach to kind of release all the pressure that was in it. It was insane. Yeah. I was like, I'm done drinking milk after this. This is insane. And then that just stuck with me. Yeah. And so certain dairies can make you feel like that. And you're taking it from a cow, and cows have udders and different things, and it's kind of just transitions into people. Yeah. So that was like an intuitive thing for eating. Cool. But also in relation to like technological devices. Mm-hmm. So, and it's really crazy that, and we're all guilty of this, I'm guilty of it, where we do things that we know that aren't good for us. Yeah. And we keep doing it. Totally. Yeah. With, like, if I'm not feeling well, or if, like, I'm, like, kind of unconscious about what I'm doing, I'll just spend long amounts of time on my phone. Or computer, or watching videos, not caring what I'm watching. I feel like everybody's guilty of it nowadays. Yeah. And it's a kind of like a bit of a coping mechanism, like a bad coping mechanism. Because if I'm avoiding something, or if something's going on that I'm not a big fan of, or I haven't responded to this like text, or I haven't decided, like, for example, what my new schedule is going to be, and I haven't responded to that text, and I'm just basically killing time or avoiding what I need to be doing until I can't do it any longer. Whether that's I've pushed off eating for so long, and now I have to get up and get food because I literally can't stay in bed anymore. Yeah. Or something else comes up that forces me to, like, all right, go figure this out now. Right. But the amount of time between I know something's up and then actually doing something about it, and the amount of when I fill that space with just endless technology, it makes me feel like shit.
Yeah. I've been there too, Doug, and I completely agree. And I mean, that is like a classic example of procrastination, and something that so many of us, including me, have been, and I don't want to use the word guilty of, because it's something that, I mean, guilt just is like sometimes not that helpful. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. But basically, how I feel about procrastination as a whole is that sometimes we have a task and we basically avoid it because we build it up in our mind as something maybe even bigger than it is. And we build it up so much. And really I think that that's a great example, because the mindlessness that comes into using our technology and those types of things, I've had to build literal structures in my life to make that not so. So I have something actually on my social media accounts where if I go after a half hour used through the day, it'll pop up. And it's the setting, and I have that. So it's like a check-in with myself, like, okay, I've been on this for a certain amount of time, and then it'll go off every 15 minutes after that. Yeah. So that is really helpful in terms of the use of technology. Yeah. And for me, at least just to become a little bit more aware. Even if I decide to click, like, nope, we're going to continue on. Yep. Like, at least I'm aware of how much time has gone by. Yeah. And I think that, like, that it becomes like a conscious decision that has to be made when it comes to getting off of technology at a certain point. And I think that for me, something that can be the most helpful in that is having a go-to thing that I do that is not technology. So it's like if I like, because there's so many things that could be like, oh, I'm avoiding doing, like you said, the thing that I have to get done. But if I get off technology, I'm not really feeling like doing that yet. No, so for like you or someone else, or finding something that is your go-to when you get off of technology. And for me, for example, I've just started to learn to play music in the last few years. So it'll be like, I'm just going to do something like, I'm going to pick up the guitar. And even if it's only like 5-10 minutes, I will utilize something like that. And honestly, it doesn't have to be, something particular, but think about like in your life, something that makes you feel good. And maybe it is creative, because honestly, when we're taking in social media, it's so much consumption, and sometimes creating can get those juices flowing. Yeah. So like, something in your own life that gets your creative juices flowing, because we don't always open up that space to be creative because we think we have to do the thing that we're putting off. But really, if we can like just move towards like, wait, I'm going to do something I enjoy that's creative, even if it's just like doodling or creating something that I like to do, anything. That can be, and it doesn't have to be something creative. It can be anything else that you find that could be your go-to to get off technology.
Like either calling a friend or speaking to a family member, a loved one. Yeah. For me, my thing has been going on runs. Like just let me, because I've had many times, and this is a great example. It's become a good go-to for me. I found that works for me, and not so much just like lifting weights, because if you lift weights, you do a set. You have a minute of downtime, your mind's still going. Yeah. So I found going on a run, I'm engaged for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, and I can't think about what I'm thinking about when I'm pushing off the way I have been. Yeah. And, like, especially with technology, it's really interesting because, like, the scrolling goes on, you see something new, everybody knows the dopamine hits that you get from it. Right. And it was really interesting. Even just yesterday, I was laying in my bed and I was transitioning away from technology and scrolling and did a tarot card reading. And as I'm reading through the book in relationship to what came up, like, I think the thought came up maybe 8-10 times of, you should stop this and go back to your phone. Countless. And I was like, oh, geez. So it came up a handful of times. Yeah. And it just, it's really interesting how we build it up in our heads. Like, I have to fight this urge. Like, this is a really great urge. And then I finished and I was ready to go back to my phone. And then the thought came up, you don't want to do this. I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't want to do this. So I put that down. But it's a huge thing. Technology is probably one of the biggest things that everybody fights with nowadays, because it's so prevalent. It's in your pocket all the time.
So true.
Yeah, just what do you do when you're bored? It's kill 5 minutes on there. Yeah. And it's so easy to, and it's the go-to.
Right, and 5 minutes can turn into 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, and all of a sudden you're in this, like, time warp.
I've killed hours. Yeah. Everybody has. Right. It's so common. So common. Hours can just go by in a flash.
Yeah. I find a good way also for me is I am a total fan of airplane mode on my phone. So if I have just been on social media or the internet for a while on my phone, I will, pick something else to do. And I like your example of exercise because that is a go-to for me too.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, okay, I've been sitting here in this world. Let me move my body. And even if it's only for 5 minutes, I literally put very small stipulations on myself, if at all, when it comes to exercise. I was I could be 1 minute. I'm just going to do 1 minute of exercise and I'll do, 10 squats and 30 seconds of planks. And that's all the pressure I put. It's no pressure basically at all for me when I break it down to that small. I find that sometimes, just throwing the phone on airplane mode and actually just letting it I have to turn off airplane mode to begin. So it's I'm making a conscious decision. And to and even before I have all my social media apps on the last page of my my phone. So I have to swipe over a few times to get to it. So as I'm swiping over to get to them, I'm setting an intention. What is my intention for going on Instagram right now?
Yeah.
And that has been so helpful. Instead of having the Instagram on my home screen when I open my phone, it's back within, and I have to go a while to so even 4 swipes
I have
to
to
get
make
over
a conscious effort.
Yeah.
And decide 4 swipes worth.
Yes.
This is what I'm doing now.
Right.
Instead of just the go-to.
Yeah.
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 No, that's cool. So, and I know you're also hugely into mental health. Mm-hmm. And you're pretty deep into it, CBT and DBT. You were explaining to me that earlier.
Yeah, the difference between CBT
also
and DBT.
TM or Transcendental Meditation.
Yeah.
I remember coming across Jerry Seinfeld when he was making Seinfeld.
Oh yeah.
That he was using that as an active way to kind of keep himself sane during the process, and he didn't really worry too much. So yeah, you have a good history. So I kind of want to dive into that, how you got into mental health and to the level that you did.
Yeah. So prior mentioning, remember I said in terms of my mental health history when I was a teenager, I was good for 13 years after that. And then when I was around 26, so quarter life kind of crisis type of feelings around that time, but I experienced some really, really hard hitting things in my life. And those old coping skills, I thought I was good. I thought I was really good. I'm 13 years of recovery. I got this in the bag. I'm good. I'm recovered.
Yeah.
And it struck up again when I was 26, and I was using, eating and not eating and those types of things as coping skills again. And it was really hard for me to feel incongruence with who I was after studying in school physiology and nutrition and these types of things, and to be wow, I'm so far away from what I want to be now, especially after my history and what I've learned, and I know what to do, but I am having such a hard time applying it when it comes to this high level of stress that I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
So I technically relapsed around 26. Okay. And again, if someone is in into it, seeking professional treatment is crucial, and I had to do that again.
Yeah.
So I was back in the same treatment center that I was in, that I was in at 13, at 26. So 13 years later, I was again in the same building in this beautiful place in Pennsylvania, but I couldn't believe it. I was almost in shock. I was how did I
remember this place.
Yeah, I was it looks the same.
Did you see the same nurses? The same people in charge?
The same, the same structure of the building, the same, all of it was so similar. And it was I was in the Twilight Zone just trying to, be I'm here again.
Yeah.
I'm here again. I thought I healed from this. But anyway, so I spent about, again, about 30 days in that treatment center, and then struggled again when I got out a little bit. Ended up having to go to a hospital in Pennsylvania because I was struggling, and you know, they were classifying the eating disorder that I was currently struggling with as like a psychiatric illness, because it is, and not only a psychiatric but physical illness, but that. So I was put into a inpatient mental psychiatric unit.
Yeah.
And in there, I was really struggling with depression and high levels of stress, PTSD at the time. And that is why I was in the psychiatric unit. And I remember feeling like, this is really scary. This is really scary. How did I get here? How did I get to this place in my life? Like, it was like one of my lowest lows. But my spirit was really strong then. Like, I had really had experiencing like traumatic things and suffering from PTSD, and my physical body was weak, but my spirit was still strong. And I find that to be something that some people experience, that like they have a resilient, or not even resilient spirit, but their spirit really does not falter, because I feel that, you know, our soul can experience things, but our spirit, it does not experience the things that the soul gets impacted with. So looking back, I can see that like my spirit was still strong, but like I said, it was so hard, and it was so scary in there. And I remember thinking, like, if I get out of here, I am going to make a difference in mental health, because I'm treated like trash in here. I'm treated so bad. It's so scary. Like, really? I mean, you know, people did try. That might be like a harsh word, but honestly, the way I started to really see actually the way that they treated mental health, because I was put in like, the mental place was like the bottom of this hospital, and it was like, basically. And they just, the way that the staff really didn't care was really alarming. And I just was a bit like, almost like, this moment is such a juncture where like, if I get out of here, and I'm going to make a difference in mental health in whatever way. So about, I'd say 2 years after that situation, after I had really helped myself physically and began to utilize Dbt therapy, which is amazing for mood instability or experiencing different things. It was made for borderline personality disorder, but it can help various disorders by being skill-based. And that is something that really differs from some things in CBT, because DBT is very, like, you're struggling with being on your phone, right? Or like, even there's a skill for that. It's called opposite action. And it's like doing the opposite of what you want to do. And like, there is a set of so many skills in DBT that can teach you. For me, like, I might be so stressed out I can't like make a meal. Well, I'm going to use opposite action. And that's just one skill within many skills of DBT that can be utilized. So I began to learn DBT. That helped me tremendously. And then I worked after that in a mental health psychiatric unit as a mental health technician. And I just decided that I was going to be like a light in there for people who were actually really going through some of the hardest, scariest, darkest times in their life, and just be there for them, and just be a light, like warm light for them. And that was my goal with starting to work within mental health, was as a mental health technician in a psychiatric hospital because of what I experienced. Yeah, that's awesome. And it really isn't, like, it's not really the most cared for aspect of our society. I think everybody kind of knows that. Yeah. Like, especially in the old days, you go back 20, 30, 40 years, like, even to back in the 50s, like, fucking horrible conditions. Straight jackets, padded rooms, just let them yell, oh, that's Jamie, she just yells all day. Yeah.
And it's like, holy fuck. And like the history with that is horrible. Experiments and everything. Like,
yeah.
So the history is just fucked on
And
that whole
honestly,
subject.
Doug, it's like it's changed in some ways where it's like the conditions are better, but honestly, when I experienced it on the other side of being a patient, like I was like, whoa. And when I experienced it on the side of like working as a mental health technician in a psychiatric unit, I was like, whoa. Like it like was
not the greatest on both ends.
It just like we're a handful of caring individuals, but it was intense. It was intense for me to not be like, how are you treating that patient like that? Like, it was intense for me to, to feel like I could make the real difference that I wanted to do within mental health. So I began to, I was doing personal training at the time too for clients, and one of my clients was a psychologist, and he was like, and I was, working with him, helping his physical body, teaching him meditation and mindfulness, and he was like, I love what you do, and I would love to bring you into my private practice and have you, lead the mindfulness portion of DBT, which is a foundational portion of DBT.
Yeah.
So that is kind of how I actually transitioned out of working in the psychiatric unit and into a private practice where I'm like helping people with some of the foundations when it comes to mindfulness and, learning how to integrate exercise in a way that is not necessarily for changing your body, but for changing your mental health and stability.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got out of the mental health facility at 26. Mm-hmm. Then how did you get into like the industry on the other end? So did you go to college? Did you pick up a job eventually?
Yeah. So even before I had my second relapse, I had finished college and I studied exercise physiology and health science, and got my degree in that. And along with that, got quite a few handfuls of certifications in different things relating to health and physical fitness and all things around that, and helping people with like motivational interviewing, mindfulness, those types of things. And EFT tapping is something that I truly believe in as well. Yeah,
that's another thing that I want to dive into. Because there's so many aspects that you listed. CBT, DBT, tapping, what is it, EFT? Or was
EFT tapping.
EFT tapping, and then also Transcendental Meditation.
Yeah.
Like, they're all fascinating.
Yeah.
Pretty much, the values, the benefits of each one. Mm-hmm. How did you get into all of them? Like, what did you start with?
Well, I would say, so I finished my college degree, then I had that relapse maybe 2 years later, and then I was totally at square one bottom, rock bottom, and I utilized DBT as the first set of skills where I began to get my life back in order using a set of skills. Mm-hmm. So I utilized, as a patient at the time, DBT. And then from there, I began to formulate just a healthier relationship with, I wouldn't even say a healthier relationship. I would just say I started to utilize exercise and food as a way just to start to heal again. And it wasn't really this profound awareness of I'm going to change, the industry in this way at all. At the time, it was more just, that was how I began to really heal myself. And then I started to notice that once I began to use mindfulness, which is a foundation in DBT and something that I've studied, that it was more just becoming aware of the moment. And that, for me, was literally, it sounded impossible. But I began to utilize it, when I was doing the dishes. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to be fully in the moment and, feel the hot water on my hands and the suds and hear the clinking of the dishes and be, totally in it just during this, 10 minutes while I'm doing the dishes. And so it was, only, short bits of mindfulness. And then and then I have to say that from then on, there was a time even for me, like, I wasn't allowing myself, I wasn't giving my permission to step into like who I really was for maybe like a year or two after that. I really felt this like deep feeling of like, I am here to help people, and I don't feel like I am allowing myself to do that yet, because back in time, at that time, I had began to pick up smoking tobacco in the rehab center that I was in. So for me, like...
You picked it up in there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And like, and even before that, I have to say, like, but like, that's when I was like, this is a coping skill that I'm using. So for me, like, I couldn't do what I needed to do with that feeling of like, oh, I use tobacco. How can I be like a wellness person? Like, I had conquered like so many things like exercise and nutrition, but I was like, but I utilize tobacco. I smoke American Spirits. How can I do this? How can I do what I need to do? And it was overcoming that addiction, that once I beat that addiction to it that I had, it was like, go girl. Like, you have overcome so much, and like, you literally know how to do, like, how to overcome. You've studied it. You've learned how to teach people to do it, and you've done it yourself. And you've just like overcome like smoking tobacco, like, for like, I had nothing else that I like was like that would allow me to hold myself back anymore.
Yeah. And
because that was for me in my mind. If I can once I quit smoking and using American Spirits or whatever, then I can do what I want to do. I can step into my power. But the thing is that I want to like be clear about is like that I might have had this stipulation at the time of letting myself, like, giving myself permission to go when I was when I had beaten like a lot of the things that I had come towards me.
Yeah.
But if I would have allowed myself to give myself more grace and not be so hard on myself and just even start before I was ready, that could have been cool too. I mean, for me, I felt like that was like my last like kind of thing that I was like, you know, I can do this. I can do like anything. I've done really hard things. I've come from like really tough, dark places, but I was able to like rise above that, and I think that like, I was just so much that I had learned in school I had applied, so much that I had learned in certifications I had applied, but really giving myself permission at that point was like huge. Yeah. And I used tapping later on, and Transcendental Meditation later on, post those things, in order to just begin to manage the stress as it showed up. And I did actually heal like some traumatic things that I experienced in the past. But to this day, like Transcendental Meditation and EFT tapping are something that I utilize regularly, daily, to manage stress and to work through tough things. So it's kind of like my maintenance. Those two are like my maintenance.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I kind of want to go into like the different ones and like what they are. So like CBT versus DBT. So what you kind of explained to me earlier was that CBT is more mental versus DBT is more behavioral.
That's a great way to kind of put it. Like CBT is a bit about...
And what does CBT stand for?
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay. Yeah. Versus DBT, which is...
Dialectical behavioral therapy.
Okay.
So CBT is a lot about, you know, fix your thoughts and your life will follow. And it is very, very helpful for a lot of people. And some people feel that it is so mental and that is not always the best approach maybe for them.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm just like kind of chalking up CBT, but it is really powerful and really helpful. There's a lot of different strategies within that. And DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy, and that is, the dialectic is understanding that two opposing thoughts can be true at the same time. That is the meaning of the dialectic within dialectical behavioral therapy. So for instance, in your example, like, I want to get off my phone, and I'm feeling like I'm feeling like guilty about being on my phone. And then also the example of like, but this is bringing me a lot of comfort, and I'm also utilizing it for, the reasons of maybe procrastination and those types of things. And kind of when we don't recognize both sides of things, that they can, it's just not as like conscious. So like, both of these things are true simultaneously.
Yeah.
So
there is a lot of comfort in spending time doing that.
Yeah.
There is.
Right. Or like, it's like, or something along the lines of like, I'm jealous of this person, and I'm also happy for them. Like, both of these two opposing thoughts can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
And like, really understanding that kind of makes the foundation of the work like true, because there's a dialectic basically in so many things.
Mm-hmm.
So that is like the kind of the premise of DBT, but DBT is really behavior-based skills. And there's 4 modules within DBT. The first module being mindfulness, so learning how to become more aware in the moment, like the example of utilizing the dishes and doing it then. But it's also really important for mindfulness, because to have mindfulness while you're using DBT, because when you're mindful, you're going to say like, hey, me and my partner are having an argument right now. Mindfully, which skill should I use? So you have to become mindful in order to know, like, this situation, I'm having an argument with my partner, maybe I should use the give skill in DBT, which is a skill that helps us learn to be gentler while having interpersonal conflicts, and validate someone else, and also, kind of get our needs met as well. So, so DBT is just like incredible in terms of learning mindfulness, learning emotional regulation, how to regulate our own emotions, how to have interpersonal relationships with interpersonal effectiveness, and then distress tolerance, which is where we're having a lot of distress, so much distress, almost like crisis type of distress, and skills in order to bring yourself down. So there's skills basically for so much, and it's been life-changing for me. And then, at this point, working within the industry as a mindfulness professional, and a fitness professional as well, and helping people in this way and working within DBT. I mean, it's just like, it's really been rewarding, because I've been the patient.
Yeah. That's awesome. I know one of the things that you mentioned was the I'm not sure how you phrased it, but the opposite. So like, the
dialectic.
The I like laying in my bed right now, but I know I need to eat food, or I know I need to make food. You could call it the opposite action, I think.
Yeah, opposite action.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that as like something that's really valuable. Kind of just doing the thing that you don't want to do, and eventually, like, you do feel better after that. You feel better after you eat a meal. If you haven't, if you've been laying in bed all day just scrolling on your phone, me personally, I feel so much better.
Right.
I try to transition into the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing.
Yeah.
The best days I have is when I'm not on my phone at all.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point, because with your example, it's like, using the opposite action skill of DBT, it's about action. And like, that is something that can be really, really hard when you're laying in your bed to be like, wait, I have to take action, the opposite of what I want to do, but I know in the long term it's going to benefit me versus the short term.
Yeah.
So a way that I combat that and is using this 5-second rule where I like give myself 5 seconds. Some people say 3 seconds, but I think 5 seconds is just mentally like easier for me. But I give myself 5 seconds to then take opposite action.
Yeah.
Because I have a hard time going from like one straight into the other. Like I think even a 5-second transition where I'm mentally preparing myself to turn the other way is good. So I'll like give myself 5 seconds and count down 5, 4, 3, take a deep breath, 2, 1, and it go. And it is about action, and it's about doing the opposite. But actually, like oftentimes when we begin, it's not that hard because we actually are finding enjoyment once we're beginning to do the thing. It's just the kinetic energy of pushing in that direction. So the 5-second rule is something that I teach others as well.
Yeah, because once you're moving, it's not too hard to transition into something else.
Exactly.
Like if you've been moving for a while, doing other things isn't hard. If you've been stagnant for a while, doing anything is hard.
Yeah.
So that's valuable information. And so you learned those two, and then you transition into tapping. Was that next?
Yeah. So,
EFT?
Yeah, I began to work.
And what does EFT stand for?
EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique.
Okay.
And that is a tapping technique of tapping on the different meridian points within this protocol. And so I first had it when I hired my first mindset coach, and she gave me a session, and I did the tapping, and I was like blown away by it because I had just never found something. I thought I had to do like a half hour to an hour of yoga in order to really like calm myself down, or sit in meditation when that felt nearly impossible. And I did have like, distress tolerance skills in DBT, but I found EFT tapping, or emotional freedom technique, to be so easy to utilize in the moment. And I could do like, 3 to 5 rounds, which only takes like 3 minutes. And I could find that basically like the amygdala, what it does by tapping on the points is the amygdala, which fires during our fight and flight response, begins to calm as we are tapping on these different, basically acupressure points. So I even do it nowadays if my friend is telling me a stressful story, and I can be a bit empathic, probably because of like my past and also just kind of my nature. So instead of like feeling like, I have techniques that I use to help me stay, as like this is their story, not mine. But I do even utilize EFT tapping techniques as someone is like saying something, and I'll tap on a certain point, or even do like some subtle tapping that I learned within my certification to be a practitioner in it. Like I'll utilize different points as someone's talking, like I said, even subtle points, just so I'm relaxing my amygdala as they're talking about their stress or trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So then what is the purpose? It's to relax the fight or flight.
Yeah.
Right?
And it brings down the cortisol in the body, which the cortisol is your stress hormones, or one of your stress hormones. And it can be, it brings down the stressor. But what I really like about EFT tapping is that as you're tapping, you can say what's going on. And if you're doing it with someone, as I do it with clients, like they're repeating after me. So I am saying like, I'm so stressed about work, and because they have explained that this is like something that they're dealing with.
Yeah. And
then, they repeat it as they're tapping. So we bring up the quote unquote negative.
Yeah.
And that is something that I do find when paired with tapping to be really helpful, because I sometimes think that talking about the negative things is important, but also gives them a lot of power, like 4 to 7 times more powerful when we talk about the negative things.
Yeah.
Apparently it says studies. So, but when paired with tapping, it's like basically reprogramming the meridians, so the energetic systems within the body and also the brain, to realize that this stressor is actually, I can relax as I'm like thinking about this stressor.
Yeah.
And so it like is a whole new correlation, not only mentally and energetically and physiologically, a whole different relationship to your stressors. So we bring up the stressor, we can dive deep into the stressor, and then once the relaxation has happened, I've had clients go from like a 9 out of 10 stressed down to anywhere from like a 5 or below. Once they hit that level where they've come down a lot as we're talking about the stressor, that is when we can begin to bring in more of the quote-unquote positive affirmations of how they want to feel, so the empowering statements. And that is when...
Still while tapping,
exactly.
Okay.
So that is when I see sometimes the level of the stressor go down all the way to 2 out of 10, 1 out of 10, completely peaceful, 0 out of 10. And we've just been talking about something that's been stressing them out, or something that has been really hard for them for a long time. And I teach this to people in order to empower themselves, because once you learn it, I mean, it is extremely worthwhile to learn to do on your own, in social situations, at times when your partner, your mother is stressing you out, just learning how to regulate the brain and the body during stressors. And so I find it to be one of my maintenance tools. That's as well awesome. As like a healing tool at various points, but I find it to be very good for maintenance.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard, I had another friend that used that in therapy as a way to get over trauma in the past. And how valuable it was for him, because it was kind of like more so than like an active stressor, but a stressor that's happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago from childhood, as ways to work through that. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I've seen it come up little bits, but haven't dove into it as much as this, but sounds really valuable. I mean, you must see the benefits in yourself and in clients from working through stuff like that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's been tremendously helpful. And I find that people who even struggle, I mean, like I've learned how to do it for clients struggling with body image and, food cravings, all types of things. Like tapping is so powerful. So, as much as the, being in the gym and helping people, like that was great, and counting their reps was cool, and teaching them how to exercise was great back in the day when I was doing that in the gym and the wellness centers that I worked in. But really teaching people now as a fitness and mindset professional, doing these things for clients, where I teach them how to find peace and liberation using these tools. And yes, you probably will see changes on the outside of you, and if those are your goals, I don't want to negate that, but it goes so much deeper, and it really is like completely liberating. And that is why I am working in my business called Body Liberation, because that is just so just utilizing the tools that have saved me, and have literally, I would not be where I am without these tools. So I really like embodying this in order to help others, because this isn't like about me. This is like really, and I'm just like a person who has done some things, but this is like for others. That is like, I'm here to help others, and I'm helping others do and find the liberation that they maybe have been wanting. A lot of people have been wanting around diet culture and exercise, and wanting to change in our habits and those things. And I've just making it easier and more liberating is on a level is why I'm here.
Yeah. And that's awesome. Like I know you were very much about changing relationship with food and diet and certain aspects, but diving into this seems like so much more in depth that you work with your clients on. So it's really cool to get the insight of how much help you provide to those that come to you. So that's really awesome. I do want to dive into TM as well, Transcendental Meditation.
Yeah.
So how'd you get into that one?
Yeah.
How'd you find out about that?
I actually found out from a friend, and I have a bit of a non-traditional approach, and traditionally TM, you are going to they teach you how to do it within the TM. So just for full transparency, I did not go and get taught.
It's like a source, right?
Yeah.
It's like trademark too, I'm pretty sure.
That's funny.
TM. Everybody knows the TM.
Yeah.
I do TM. It's like a Hollywood thing. I know
Exactly.
Jerry Seinfeld did it, and they have plenty of other like testimonials of famous people.
Yeah.
But it is like a course. Like I think it's like $250 when I checked or something like that.
Exactly. So and for me, I had been meditating for pretty much daily for like maybe a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I really want to try TM meditation because my friend had inspired me because she started practicing it, and I was like so curious about it. So basically what TM is they give you, when you go to this course, they give you your mantra. And your mantra is something that you repeat over and over and over again in your silent meditation. So it's a way to focus the mind. And they give this mantra to you. So it's very special, and they give it to you, and you don't tell anyone your whole life. It is so like sacred in that way, where it's like you don't tell anyone your mantra, because then you don't relate it to your friend or your brother who you told your mantra to. It's like it's just yours.
Yeah.
So that is the traditional sense, and those who are interested should seek out, that route. And like I said, for me, I was like, I just want to pick my own mantra.
Yeah.
So I picked my mantra, and I haven't told anyone it, but I picked a mantra for myself, and it's just a sound. So not really correlating to anything in the English language, the language that I speak. Mm-hmm. But that is how I began. And I like I said, I've been meditating for probably a year and a half. But again, I don't expect people to jump into meditation necessarily. For me, it kind of started with random mindfulness practices. But if you want to try meditation, go for it. I just have found that transcendental meditation to be, after utilizing this mantra, I was meditating for maybe 12 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. And in transcendental meditation, it's 20 minutes, 2 times a day. And for me, pushing it to the 20-minute mark has made crazy difference in the way I feel like at the end of the meditation. Yeah. And also there's something about transcendental meditation that they give the analogy of like the ocean. So like our minds are like an ocean, and the waves on the top are our thoughts. And there can be a whole big storm happening even on the top of the water. And that if we can practice transcendental meditation and repeating our mantra for the 20 minutes at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day is the traditional practice. If you can begin to practice that, then it's like the storm at the top of the ocean. You actually, as you begin to practice transcendental meditation during your meditation, you kind of come down towards the bottom of the ocean. So there can be a crazy storm happening at the top in our thoughts, but through this practice, an intention is like to not really even feel that storm during this practice. And for me, that happens a little bit later on in the 20-minute mark. Mm-hmm. So I found that sometimes around the last few minutes is when I really reach more of that state of like peacefulness, even though I have a lot of stuff going on that day, or a lot of just thoughts like plaguing me in general. Yeah. I'm able to kind of find a peacefulness that I wasn't able to reach the depth of maybe before. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hugely valuable to be able to disconnect from the thoughts that we're having, or the constant, it's been called the monkey mind. Mm-hmm. Constantly needed to focus on something or whatever's going. Exactly. Yeah. Whatever's going on, I just need to focus on it and to be able to calm that. Mm-hmm. and focus elsewhere. Just give your mind the space to let something else naturally flow in. Yeah. So it's completely, totally valuable. Yeah. And like meditation is so valuable in that respect too. That you can have that time to let something fresh come in.
Yeah.
That's something that's not so like crazy driven, like monkey mind focused to come in.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think like for a lot of people, just deciding I'm going to meditate and try to like keep my mind blank, not think about anything, and come back to my breath when it does, that's good.
Yeah.
But I have found that having something to focus on, it has really changed a lot for me, and I could see how for others who find that the idea of meditation to be like too hard to really reach that state. I totally get that. I've been there. So yeah, utilizing a strategy, and I wouldn't say it is TM meditation because it is, I picked my own mantra, but utilizing some of the values and the strategy within that at this point has been really, really beneficial. And yeah, I love it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you start running your own business? When did you make that I'm going to do this, and this is when I launched, and your website, and yeah, kind of what you do. It's body liberation, right? That's the name?
Yeah. It was after I had left working at the psychiatric hospital.
Okay.
And I was like, I want to go back to my roots. Like, I love exercise. I know the ins and outs of it. I love all these like nutrition, and it was at the beginning of the pandemic. And realizing that my business, where I would go to clients and help them with their exercise and meditation, it was great, but it wasn't going to work during a pandemic. So I was like, how do I do this? How do I create a business and do it? So it was like, I was almost clueless on how to make this happen as an online business. So I hired my first business coaches to help me lay the foundation of strategies in order to do that. So that was how it started at the beginning of the pandemic.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget how valuable hiring business coaches can be.
Yeah, and I do think it's very valuable, and it's really important to find the right person, because like even in my line of work, like sure, you can hire a personal trainer in person, you can hire an online fitness coach, but finding the right person, some people will just focus on the strategy. So you might find an online fitness coach that focuses on how to work out and what to eat and what not to eat. Awesome. Great. And if that is what you want, that's awesome. But there's a lot of different people. Like, for instance, I bring a lot of mindset work into feeling this liberation and into the experience of exercise and nutrition and how to really basically heal and formulate a relationship with ourselves. And for me, once I began to learn that within business, I had to find the right person to really help me, and learning the mindset around business to be so important. Because like I could learn all the strategies, but if my mindset wasn't there, if I was scared to do the things, if I was holding myself back, if I was doing the, just had a lot of doubt or disbelief in myself and my mission, then it was not going to work. I could learn all the strategies, but I wasn't going to do it. And the same thing with exercise and nutrition. If you can learn the strategies, but if the mindset's not there, then it's just not the same. It's not going to work the same.
Yeah, I've noticed that for me, business has always been something that it's been tough to kind of crack into, or tough to really like get to the level that I've wanted to. So that's why I really like value when you said you hired a business coach to help get you over that hurdle, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But business has definitely been an aspect, just like sometimes a lot of confusion around it. How do I get clients? How do I want to go about things?
Yeah.
There's a million ways you could go about doing it,
Yeah.
whether it's like results driven or market driven or just straight up analysis of like put out this and I get this results back.
Right.
Put out that and I get that results back, versus doing what you feel compelled to put out and different things. So there's like different strategies like that.
Yeah.
So that's really awesome that you hired a business coach to help you navigate the beginnings or the aspects that can be troublesome.
Yeah.
So you started that in the beginning of the pandemic?
Mm-hmm. And I was focused then on helping healthcare workers. So I wanted to help healthcare workers do this because of the pandemic. So that was my first mission was to help women who are working in healthcare.
Yeah. It's funny. Ironically, a lot of healthcare workers need a lot of help.
It's true.
They need a lot of like health care.
Yeah.
Like it's really ironic. I've spent various times in hospitals, and certain healthcare workers are really unhealthy.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, and because it's like that world, it's not even like set up for their optimization.
It's really not.
No.
12-hour shifts are not optimal for anybody.
Exactly.
I think they do normally 3 12-hour shifts for a week, sometimes maybe
Right.
4, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely taxing mentally.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, helping women who are in that world, because I've felt that during the pandemic they needed the love and attention. So that was my first mission, was to help women who are working in healthcare.
Nice.
And then really starting to come into my alignment within like my purpose here was something that led me into opening it up to all people. Mostly focus in helping women, but I am open to helping anyone.
Yeah.
But I really, when I started to get into like alignment with my mission, that is when things really started to change, Doug. I have to tell you, like things started to really shift. So it's been about a couple years working in my business, but when the alignment started to happen, and when I was working with someone to help me, a coach to get me into my alignment with that is when the shifts really started to happen. I literally started to see changes within myself, within my response, within how lit up I was to do the work. And that was everything. Like, yeah, I was so, I just wasn't as, I loved helping women in healthcare, but I was ready for something different. And so finding that alignment was crucial. And I've seen a lot of changes after doing that.
Yeah. So what were some of those things that helped get you into that alignment? Yeah, because that's usually like the little hurdles that you get over to bring you to the next level. Like that helped you level up.
Yeah.
So what were some of those things that helped you, like what were some of those hurdles you had to get over? What helped you level up? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, it was hiring the right person who could get into my mind and help me do this. But what I got from that was this ability to trust myself in business. And that was something that I wasn't taught within my first couple business coaches that I had hired. It wasn't about trusting myself. And that comes into play even in talking with people about my business and what I do. There was, they want to give me the strategies. This is how you do it. This is what you say. And this is how you answer.
This is how you sell it.
This is how you sell. And this is how you make a quote unquote sales call. That's not what I do these days. This is like, I am basically I'd say what changed for me was asking myself, instead of like turning towards someone, and I did need the strategies in the beginning. Like I needed the strategies of how do I create this app that the clients and I work through? How do I create, the calls that are so momentous into holding them accountable, keeping them in alignment? How do I do that? Like the strategies, yes, but after a certain point, it was like, what feels good for me and what would feel good for them? And like, that is all what it is about for me at this point. And realizing that my marketing, like I do have to use my face, literally, obviously, like to get on a live video or to, share what I'm doing oftentimes, but it's not about me. And that is something that I found very helpful for me, is talking about myself is something that I've had to gain a little bit more comfortable with. And I think that just realizing it's not about me. Like this is about serving others. And so the biggest strategy I've learned is like checking in with my, not my brain, with my body.
Yeah.
About strategically doing this, or like what feels really good. and what would feel really good, because that is honestly when I like get the most out of it, and others do too, is when I'm like lit up, excited, and feel in alignment. Others feel that.
That's totally true. 100%. Yeah, others can feel that. Sounds like you took a more intuitive way to promote different things.
Yeah, just in the intuitive sense, all in my business. And of course it's like it's has a lot of great protocols and strategies, and those are always there, and just like the same like you talked about earlier with like someone's nutrition, like you can get strategic about it, and that's great, and I do that too. But like learning how to trust yourself, learning how to build a relationship with yourself, learning how to make business fun, which is something that totally went out the window. And like learning that like I can be in both a like mental headspace of I'm in my workflow, but like learning how to make it fun and pleasurable and enjoyable is like what is keeping me coming back to it.
That's a skill in itself.
Totally.
Yeah, because I've gotten into different ventures that are just, I've found it's so money focused that there's very little fun in it. And it's kind of just like a drag, and like it's all about the future payoff, and like I'm dreading what I'm going through, and sometimes that is worth it. Like sometimes the payoff is great enough, but it also kind of, you sacrifice the performance in the now, in the short term, or in what you're putting out, because people can tell if you're not totally behind what you're pushing.
Yeah,
they can totally tell that. And I do find that sharing like our own stories is always valuable. People love hearing stories. Like people love hearing what other people have gone through or how they got there and whatnot. Everybody loves stories.
Yeah, I think our literal nature is like to want a beginning, middle, and end, and a story really does
it's
that.
To want storytelling, telling stories around a fire, or like even before like written history was down, it was passing down history through stories. Parables and everything. So people love stories. I love stories. Everybody loves stories. So yeah,
and that is something that honestly has helped me too, because before in the beginning of business, I wasn't sharing my story, and I wasn't sharing like why I am so passionate about what I do, and why what I do is so massively helpful. Is because like I've said, I've been there before. I've been the one who really needed the help on how to formulate my own well-being, because I was so far from it. And I had even, like I said, had learned through my education, through 6 years of formal education and tons of certifications, but how quickly that can slip away, and how far from who, like, how far down I had gone in my well-being. It's so, I mean, I've been there too. So it's just like, I really can relate to a lot of my clients, and a lot of people who just have been in similar situations and have triumphed, because we all have a story, Doug. And it's so true how like we all have overcome a lot, and being like proud of that. And sometimes, like I said earlier, learning to advocate for yourself, learning to say like, I do need help in this area. I do not know how to start this. I don't know how to be held accountable in this where it feels good and exciting. I don't know how to make this exciting. And sometimes like being ready, and sometimes even like not even being ready, but being like willing to begin to be like, I want help in this. And I'm ready to ask for it. To be like such it can literally like shift the direction of your life, because it's done it to mine. To recognize that you need help, and then also seeking it out. Like, I need help. This has been an issue that's come up many times. Let me start going out. Let me start asking some other people. Let me start crowdsourcing an answer. Let me find somebody who I resonate with, and all that. It's extremely valuable. No, you're definitely doing a fantastic thing. So you have, I believe you have a website. Yeah, I have a website. I have social media.
What is your website?
So My website is, I have to pull it up. I think it's
Okay, I'm gonna link it in the podcast
perfect. Yeah,
details and everything.
It's like,
and everyone will get to find you on Instagram and every
perfect.
way they.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's my Instagram is Morgan Sunray.
Sunray.
So
nice.
And yeah, you can visit my website, or I'm really active on social media and Facebook as well as Morgan Ray.
Yeah.
But
I said it before, and I really like seeing the things that you do post, because it's a new way to look at it's a way to look at diet, a way to look at exercise and our relationship with it. And that's incredibly valuable. I know I'm doing really well when I have a different thought that's not the normal way I look at something. So like a fun example is that, like, I remember one time I was making a left-hand turn on this road that was a 2-lane road. So I was making a left-hand turn. I was going slow. So the person coming from the left beeped at me, honked at me. And I was like, oh, they must know me.
Yeah.
And just like, oh, that's hilarious. Like that's the thought that pops up. They obviously don't know me. They're upset that I'm going slow. But I'm like, oh, they must know me. This is great. And like thoughts like that really make me laugh and bring joy into the moment. And so seeing the things that you post up about, like your post-Thanksgiving one about, I'm not going to get on your case about having to go work out right now.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, this is a refreshing view. And those refreshing views, you don't necessarily see them all the time. And so it's refreshing when you do come by it. So seeing the things that you do post is really nice, because everybody can use a refreshing view, hands down.
Thank you. Yeah. It feels good to share the things that have helped me and are helping others, and so yeah, I appreciate that you find them to be influential amongst the things we see online. So that is super,
for sure.
super nice.
Yeah, there's some things that you see that aren't too great, and then some things you see that it's like, ooh, that's refreshing. I like hearing that. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate the things you put out. So keep putting them out.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. It's really awesome. I love having these conversations. It's just like I told you before, I have so many of these conversations, or I've had so many of these that I'm like, I need to record this. Plus, I love getting to know I love getting to know people. I love getting to know how they got into things.
Yeah.
And then the things they overcame to get to where they're at. And so, like, I'm sure if we talk again in a couple of years, you'll have more things that you've gotten over to get through to a further point. But I love getting to know people and hearing their stories. Like, stories are fantastic, and I love it. So I love doing this, and I love giving other people the spotlight, because there's a lot of people that I know that are doing great things, you and your body liberation and your business, and like other people. It's just really great to bring a spotlight and also to share, because there's a lot of people out there that are doing a lot of great things and just making more people aware of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people listen to this. I get not too many. I think like 100 people listen sometimes, but like still.
Yeah.
I love it.
And it's great. And like, it's so true. We like all have a story, and we're all, and I love hearing other people's too. And so thank you so much for having me. I'm like super happy and honored to share my story with you and with your listeners. Yeah. What everyone's do listen. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So this is going to be on YouTube. It's also on like Apple Podcasts and Spotify too. Amazing. So, so you can share it with whoever want to look at it. It's Diving and Thriving Podcast. I love it. The Diving and Thriving Podcast. Yes. So throw a nice little intro. But yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Anything left you want to share before we wrap it up? I want to share something quickly just about grace, and just like having grace with ourselves. Take as long as you want. Yeah. Just like, just having grace with yourself. It can be so beneficial because sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to change, because like we've mentioned in this podcast that like we always want to fix something. So it's just human nature. So just having grace with yourself, and for me that means like easing up. And because sometimes I think that we think we have to be so hard on ourselves in order to meet our goals or what we want for our lives, and actually, if we really think about it, like how helpful is that? Like sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes a bit of that is helpful, But for me and for a lot of people, like stacking the pressure on can kind of make it so we can't like move so well. So I have found that an antidote to that to be like giving yourself grace. And like, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I'm giving myself grace, so I'm just going to stay here on social media for another hour. But it means just like, almost like, I wouldn't say, instead of the like feeling like, oh, I'm doing the worst thing, or oh my gosh, like this is not what I want to be doing, and we're putting like these negative projections on ourselves. It's like neutral or better. So it's like, this is like neutral, and I'm ready to use a skill to change my direction. And first I'm going to give myself grace. Like I'm not like, and that comes down to even like nutrition stuff too. Like it's like just giving yourself some grace, especially after like a big meal, like you mentioned, like Thanksgiving, like you let yourself eat it guilt-free, like let it follow you into the next day.
Yeah.
So I think like giving yourself just grace, and also then you can turn and pivot. Like, it's really helpful for me to allow that grace to come in when I'm being really hard on myself. So
it sounds like you suffer with that. I know I suffer with that, being too hard on myself.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people
do.
A lot of people do. So yeah, it's a nice thing to remind to keep in the forefront of our minds. Don't try not to be too hard on ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's still things we can do, but give yourself that grace, and basically like let yourself love yourself, even when things aren't exactly where you want them to be. Like allowing yourself, because really like if we want something so much and we might not be there, like there's this distance from where we are now to where we want to be. And sometimes when we can just like love ourselves the way we are now, it actually brings in so much energy into ourselves in the moment. Yeah. And that's sometimes really what we need to begin to start walking in a direction that feels good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really valuable. I mean, a lot of times, like, we wait until that future moment when I have this, I'll be happy. Yeah. When I'm this way, I'll be happy. Mm-hmm. And it's tough to revamp that into, I'm happy now. Because you look to that future thing, and it's, once you get that future thing, a lot of times you're going to be looking to the next thing.
Exactly.
And then you're constantly chasing happiness. You're chasing something.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit out of reach.
Right.
A little bit or a lot out of reach. And yeah, sometimes, and even when you get it, it might not be the most fulfilling.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah, and just learning to like have grace and to love yourself at least even just a little bit, or be neutral about yourself is another way I like to put it too, because sometimes love can feel really hard and a huge thing. So just more neutralness, even if it's not like the most the most love, just neutral, and that is really helpful in order to begin to shift in a direction that feels better.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
Thanks.
I think that's a great way to end it.
Cool.
Thank you for coming on, Morgan.
So
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So much so. I think everybody had a great time listening, for whoever did.
Yes. So good. Thanks so much, Doug.
It's my pleasure. Until next time.
Yes.